ancient Egypt. So, you know, Russell diverges a little bit from the books. We developed a character kind of on the fly. Being an ancient character comes from a pagan culture, and so his morals are informed by a pagan sensibility and by a pagan past. And so they're going to be something different from what advanced in the Western world. You know, his biggest loyalty was to those he loved. And I think that's actually a universal value. His loyalty to Talbot was the most powerful thing for him. And when he lost Talbot, he justly took revenge. If you think that Eric had a right to take revenge for his father's death, then Russell has every right to take revenge for Talbot's death. That's a deeply moral decision.
Kristen, Pam is obviously very loyal to Eric, but do you think that beyond that she has a kind of coherent moral system of her own?
I do. I mean, I actually think she has probably more integrity than I do, you know, because she stands behind what she believes and feels, and she really has huge integrity. That's what I always feel playing her, that she's extremely consistent.
And if you want to line up in the two aisles, we'll be taking questions in just a few minutes. Charlene, as the person who created all this, is that something you're doing consciously, thinking about different approaches to morality and having these characters express those different approaches?
Yes.
And Joe Alcide, being a werewolf, you would expect him to have very much the pack mentality, but he seems to have kind of gone off on his own and started developing his own moral codes. What do you think about that?
Well, I think for him, as far as his morality goes, I think he's a good judge of character. And I think that for him, a person's character trumps his own kind or his own race. You know, for example, last season, he realized early on that Suki's heart, I think he saw something in her that was very different than most of the people that he grew up with and grew up around, and would consistently make decisions to defend her, even when it meant killing his own kind, which, you know, he has a very deep love and protection over his own kind. But, you know, as you can see with, like, you know, the fight with Coot, and, you know, and then running over Gus's cousin with the Wolfmobile, shockingly similar to the Teen Wolfmobile, the original Michael J. Fox series, which was amazing. I really wanted to do a scene where I was surfing on top of the van, but we couldn't work it in. No, but I mean, he would, you know, he would consistently kill, you know, his own kind, and then you see that in this season. You know, he's kind of given up on the pack and tries to run from it, and decides to give Debbie another shot and gives her a chance to, you know, make amends for her past transgressions. And you know, the trick of it was he did that thinking that Suki was dead, and when she shows up, he has a loyalty to Debbie, but he's torn because his heart belongs with Suki, and he knows it.
Aww.
And so but he's a loyal guy, and what was interesting this season was him, you know, being stuck in between there, because there is a point where he lies right to Debbie's face, and that, I think, was very telling for him. And you're gonna love tonight's episode. A lot of that's gonna come to a head.
And Jim, Hoyt grew up very sheltered, very much in a kind of black and white world. Although he hasn't left the town, many things have come to the town and changed his worldview. Now he's experiencing some serious betrayals. How do you think that's going to affect his own personal morality?
Shattered.
We'll see something about the next few episodes?
Well, yeah, we'll see. I just point out this is the morning panel, so the matches are going to be a little more, I think, condensed.
It's not much. I mean, look, the betrayal of that kind just spins you up. It spins you up. And There's nobody left standing by me, and I've never done anything wrong to anybody.
Aww.
Oh, yeah. No, at some point, you know, and this will be interesting to see what the writers do with it, because what's left? When your whole life is lived for other people, and they go, yeah, then what's left but a big, empty, hopefully dark, maniacal abyss? I don't know.
Kristen, you've remarked that Pam should write an advice column. What do you think Dear Pam?
Yeah, Joe and I were brainstorming this in the van at Comic-Con. Because we were talking about how it should be bad advice, of course. You know, to humans, it's very good. Because, you know, Jessica calls her and says, what should I do with this dead body? So it would be so politically incorrect and so wrong, I'm not sure. I suggested it to HBO, and they loved it. But I think then they started looking at the legalities of it. You know, my boyfriend's annoying me. What should I do? I mean, right? It's all illegal, what she would say. But that's what she, again, that's her moral code. She's intensely moral. You know, someone's annoying you. People are pets or food.
It's like the evil Carrie Bradshaw.
Yeah.
You on the bed, just typing with your feet. Like,
Right. I would think they'd be very short answers, very to the point, very direct. They'd be often an action to take, not a philosophy or an emotional thing.
Eat him.
Right, Pam?
It's interesting that you should bring up advice columns because in the books, Pam loves to read Ann Landers. And they love to laugh at the answers. You know, they're going, is this really how humans act? Where Pam's answer would always be, killing them.
Right, that's it. A very short answer. Is he a good dresser? All right, keep him around. You know, I think it'd be brilliant. We'll see. You know, you might see that one day.
And you, Dennis, you were talking about developing the character of Russell Edgington. The relationship between Russell and Talbot was so believable. How did you go about developing that actual relationship?
Long hikes with the actor who played him, Theo Alexander. We usually went on hikes in a place called Runyon Canyon in LA, and we would meet at the bottom of the canyon, and we would hike for like an hour. And while we hiked, we would talk about where we met and how we met, and try to kind of, I don't know, hash it out. When he'd make a suggestion, I would kind of go, nah, I don't think Russell would do that. And he would say something about himself, and I would go, I'm not sure about that. But we decided that because, again, I feel like I'm stepping all over your feet, but the information was not developed for reasons, because it's not always necessary. But for us, even if we don't see it, we need to know what the answer is. So we met at a masked ball in 1300 in Constantinople. He was dressed as Alexander the Great, and I was dressed as Caesar. And at the time, he was a prince, a petty prince in the Byzantine kingdom. And actually, it would have been Byzantium, sorry, not Constantinople. And we ended up hitting it off. You know, we danced a few dances. We went to the punch bowl. I had to work the next night, and so I said, "What time do we get off?" And I said, "Depends how many people I have to kill." Because I was a mercenary soldier for hire for other petty princes. I would get to keep the spoils of the battlefield and the bodies. And so we actually met the next night, and you know, it was just kind of love at first sight. And at some point I turned him, because what you do?
In real life, marriage is hard, and yeah. But things keep you together. Maybe you have just such a great sense of humor with the other person, they really get you in a way nobody else does. What do you think has kept Russell and Talbot together for centuries?
You know, I thought it was fascinating. There was our costume designer, Audrey Fisher, who we all love and talk about. She is so brilliant that she made a decision that Russell was dressed by Talbot. Left his own devices, Russell would wear, like, you know, something like a trench coat. And so when Talbot dies, Russell reverts to kind of a savage form of himself and loses the civilizing factor of Talbot. And I thought that was such a brilliant way of expressing how relationships actually affect each other. You know, does somebody dress you? Does somebody say, oh, no, honey, not that time? And Talbot civilized Russell. Talbot made Russell a more palatable figure. And in return, Russell protected and allowed and gave Talbot the lifestyle to which he was accustomed, allowed him to live in this kind of environment. And what I loved about it was that there was this incredible fierceness about them. They had a private, what they did in private, nobody knew. They may have bickered in public, but you know that behind the scenes that they both took care of each other. And I just love that. It was an intensely, you know, it was a very intensely beneficial relationship.
Joe, you were talking about you being a former construction worker, Alcide working construction. I know that you starred as Flash Thompson in the first Spider-Man movie, and then you took a hiatus for a while, became a roadie for a while, did some construction. What was that like, taking that hiatus?
Well, what was that like? Jeez, that's a good question. I was a big drinker, man. I just was always that dude. You know, my heroes were Jim Morrison and Gary Oldman and, you know, those kind of wild rock star-ish, you know, crazy artistes. And, you know, I just got to the point where, you know, 2 packs a day and a bottle of whiskey wasn't going to cut it anymore. And so, you know, I took some time off from acting to basically stop doing it. And in that time, I started thinking about what I wanted to do, and did I want to keep acting, what did I want to, you know, whatever. And moved around a bit, was a roadie for a rock band, Goldfinger. I toured the world with them. Yeah. And then I was a sparring partner for an NHL hockey player in his off season. I learned how to box, and the trainer actually wanted me to fight in events. I thought, okay, if I ever do go back to acting, I probably have to, I gotta save the moneymaker. I was a DJ for a little while, and I finished my degree. And then thank you. And then at the end of that period, I walked into a friend of mine was building his own house. And I walked in and looked up, and one of my favorite books ever was The Fountainhead. And I just love architecture. I love Frank Lloyd Wright. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and some of his houses are around there, falling water, and I was always fascinated. And I looked up and went, man, this is amazing. And I said, you know, could I come work for you? And he said, you sure? And I went, yeah. And he goes, okay. And he goes, show up and pick up this truck at 7 a.m. And I went, okay. And I showed up and picked up this truck, and I would go and deliver sand and gravel to job sites from 7 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. And I just shoveled sand and gravel, mixed cement, jackhammered, and did that for a little while, and was content with it. And then acting came back and found me. And acting became too loud to ignore. And so I came back, and I think that time off really made me a lot more grateful. And I think working with those guys that I worked construction with, I really had a respect, and I really felt honored to be able to be an artist and live that lifestyle. And so, you know, when I came back again, you know, I had a really different perspective. I fold my pants up and hang them up. For the wardrobe people, I show up early, I go home late, you know, and obviously with the 2 packs of cigarettes a day and a bottle of whiskey a day out of the way, I could start working out the way that I had always intended to. And then, you know, 5 years into that, True Blood comes along and my life changes.
Yesterday we were talking about writing and directing movies. Kristen, I know you paint. Dennis, you were talking about making dioramas.